But no matter how
What's up,
much y'all
everybody?
talk, I'm
Welcome
not going to
back.
stop it.
Welcome back to the Jeremy G podcast. This is your boy Reckless Talk. This is episode 9, the hungry and the heartless. I want to welcome all my guests here. I appreciate y'all taking time out your night to come and talk about this topic. In saying that, I would like to start out with what's everyone's memories of growing up with school lunch. We can start with you, Paul.
Oh, I went to a private school, so I didn't really benefit from a school lunch. So I don't really have any positive or negative memories of it. I really wasn't in that program. So for me, as a kid, it was not anything that I was really even aware of, other than I knew some people were on it. That was about it.
Okay. What about you, Lulu? I think we lost Reggie.
I was in public school my whole life and whatnot, and I was at a pretty affluent area. So we had like a potato bar. We had like baked bread for us each day, with the normal like burritos and chili dogs and all that crazy stuff that you eat as a kid and whatnot. And so I remember I used to watch people like rush to the cafeteria to get to mashed potato Mondays and things like that. So it's like everybody had their own special thing that they wanted to eat. Mine was breakfast pizza. I like that little square pizza that they had that was just really pizza, but they just put breakfast sausage on it.
Yeah.
So that was like one of the favorite subjects of the day. Lunch was always good.
What about you, Jessica?
Yeah, like Paul, I also went to it was really small private Catholic school, and I don't remember lunch being an issue. Like I think there was some price associated with it, but I like when I was that young, didn't really like pay attention to that. I know by the time I got to high school, which I was still in private then as well, that there was a cost for it then. And I know, that we did have like lunch assistance even in private school at that point, for students who needed it. But it wasn't really in my environment. It wasn't a big deal who had it and who didn't or anything like that.
Were you able to tell who had it and who didn't?
Only because I lived in a small town, and I just, you knew who was from a family that was like struggling or not struggling. Just because we all like grew up together from kindergarten or like second or third grade up through high school, so we all kind of knew each other, and our parents knew each other. So it was more just small town than it was, knowing.
I like that you said that. As kids, you really don't even think about it. Because for me, I grew up in New York in the hood, and we didn't know no difference. Everybody was just eating together. I didn't realize until high school when I went to school, like a really nice school in the suburban area, nice in the suburbs, and like they have carpets, look real nice. Got separate school lines for nachos and pizza, and I'm like, wow, what is this? I know one school line and we all eating the same thing. You know what I mean? So I didn't even know it was an issue. You know what I mean? So it's saying that. Let's see. How would you have felt if you wasn't able to eat lunch at school? Because with these days, there's a lot of kids that don't. I just made a comment in our group the other day that I had a conversation with a friend where his daughter wasn't allowed to eat school lunch because she was negative 10 cents in her account. So as a kid, how do y'all think they feel, and how would y'all have felt?
I do remember that in high school, somebody's account going into the negative, and I remember, those negative feelings associated with it, and you kind of felt bad for that. It's almost like you felt ashamed that the system would even do that to somebody.
Yeah.
Over that amount of money and stuff. And like you say, you never know what somebody's going through. So there's a part of it that, yeah, it's a business, but at the other end of it, these are children. It seems like you could. I think nowadays most of the schools do make allowances for situations like that. I think if your account's not caught up, you eat peanut butter and jelly every day, or something like that. I remember seeing that at some of the schools. So yeah, that was an awkward moment. And that was one of as I was growing up, that was one of the first times a societal awkwardness kind of came over me and stuff. So yeah, now that you mentioned it, I do remember that.
Well, I might be older than you, or maybe it's just that I went to public school. But when those things would happen, even as a small child, I could tell, because when they first started trying to do free lunch or whatever, you would eat different things. You wouldn't eat the same things that the kids that were paying would get to eat. So if they had like a hamburger, Thursday was always hamburger day. So if they had a hamburger on that Thursday, if you were on free lunch, or if your parents had reduced lunch or something, you would eat something completely different. You were eating like a ham sandwich. You were eating like a grilled cheese or something like that. So as little kids, we were able to tell, that somebody didn't have the same thing we had, and we would start to talk about it because we could see the difference. And then as I moved into high school and middle school, you were able to tell because they had you go through separate lunch lines, so it was crazy. You were able to tell who had and who didn't. So it introduced that class aspect before you even, were able to get out of there. I used to feel so bad for my friends who couldn't eat. I used to give them my hamburger. We would trade. I would eat a ham sandwich and let them have a hamburger, one day or something like that. Because you feel bad for that. That awkwardness that you talked about is very real.
Yeah, I see.
Hold on, real quick. Hold on, Reginald, you causing the outbreak. Everybody can hear? We good?
I did what?
Was I on there doing some weird stuff? Everybody good?
Yeah, I'm here.
You said I'm causing what?
Nah, like when you came back in, it was making some weird noise. We couldn't hear nothing. Hey, y'all, chat. Natalie was in here. To catch you up on Reginald, so my first question I'll ask everybody is their memories
to another device.
You said what?
He said he's going to switch to another device.
If I'm causing trouble.
Yeah, if you got another device, no, you good now. It was just making some weird noises when you came in. You good now? Or not? Go ahead, continue, Lulu.
Oh no, I was just saying. I mean that awkwardness is it's very real, and kids carry that with them. So I couldn't imagine. I felt so bad that my friends couldn't eat. You know what I mean? I'm not a small woman, so not eating was detrimental. You know what I mean? That was like life shattering. And then, but for people to know what it meant, that if you had like the little green ticket, because in elementary they would give you tickets, and you would take your ticket up there and have all your information, and they put your information in the computer, and you go to your line and get your food. Well, if you were not on free lunch, or you didn't have reduced lunch or whatever, you'd have a white ticket. Everybody else would have a blue or a green ticket. And kids know, they notice, And so, but to the idea of, like you said, your friend not being able to eat because his daughter not being able to eat because she was 10 cents over, that I would be on flame. That school would, man, look.
Let me add in real quick. You talking about tickets. Y'all must have went to some nice schools, because where I grew up, we were all dirt poor eating the same thing. The milk was possibly spoiled too. All right. Question 3. What were meal times like in the summer at y'all's houses growing up? And this question actually leads into my next question. I'm gonna start with you, Paul.
I grew up middle class in the middle of the hood. So I got to see a lot of experiences that I didn't have to experience. So, I mean, I can't ever remember going hungry, not eating. I ate what my mom put out there, and I didn't always like it, but yeah, it was a little bit different for me because I realized what was going on, but I really wasn't a part of it. So yeah, I was on the inside looking in. We'll put it like that.
Oh, okay. And you, Jessica?
Yeah, I grew up middle class as well. Not in the middle of the hood, but yeah, I don't remember ever thinking about food, or like whether there was going to be food for lunch, or, you know, it might just be a sandwich or a Lunchable or whatever, like whatever it was that we had at the time. But it's not something that I didn't go without. I never went without lunch.
And for me, I was never home. So now that as an adult and I can look back at it, it's like, yeah, we really didn't have much food. My mom did what she can do, you know. And but I was never home to notice that. You know, I was always either playing in a basketball league or just running the streets. So I was eating as I was on the go. And what about you, Lou? How was your summer meal times like in the summer at home?
Well, what'd you say, Paul? You grew up middle class in the middle of the hood?
Yeah.
Natalie said Lunchables. Oh, you was rich.
I know, right?
Yo,
No,
it's funny. Hold on, I don't mean to cut you off, but it's funny she said that because, you know, growing up, I would see kids eating Lunchables, and to me, that's how I looked at it, like, man, they must got money. Their mom's buying them Lunchables, not realizing they 89 cents.
Yeah.
Well, see, with us, we were the opposite. My dad worked real hard to keep us in the smallest house in the second best neighborhood. You know what I mean? In Leaks, in that area, because it's an affluent area, and you don't really see inside other people's houses. You know, we didn't get to go visit and spend the night or whatever. I just knew that at my house during the summer, we ate breakfast, we cleaned up, we went outside to go play all day. Then we came home and we ate dinner. You know, there wasn't an in between. You might get a snack or something. If you were to go drink something out the water hose, don't come back in the house, you know, kind of thing. But there wasn't like 3 planned meals a day because there were 5 of us in the house, and there's no way that we could have sustained that in the summer. So.
All right. So that leads to my next question. So 42 House members just voted against extending the free lunch over summers. What's everyone's thoughts on that?
I would like to know why. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I would like to know why they voted against it, though, because a lot of times the devil is in the details. Was it something else added onto the bill that they couldn't agree with? Was it a clean bill? You know, I would hate to think that somebody would just say, well, we don't want them having free lunch. You know, was it a concern of waste? Was it a concern? And I'm just going to throw this in here. I've owned my business for most of my life, and I had custody of my youngest daughter for most of her life. And I remember I went to school one day to get her set up for lunch, and they were like, Mr. Darden, you're on free lunch. I was like, and why am I on free lunch? I'm like, the girl is blessed. Well, no, yeah. And it came down to a matter of dollars and cents, because for every kid that they put on free lunch, the school got extra dollars from the federal government. Mm-hmm. So there is concern that there's a lot of people on free lunch that doesn't really need it. And I think there's also a lot of concern that there's people that do need it that we need to make sure has it. So because I thought about that when you brought this topic up, and I was like, I want to make sure I get that in there, because I was like, I got to pay taxes every year. Why is she getting free lunch? And I actually tried to take her off, and they would not do it. So
that's correct.
I would love to follow up your comment, because my kids go to a school where everyone gets free lunch, including my kids who don't need it, don't qualify for it, but they do get it. It's available to them. They rarely ever take advantage of breakfast because they normally eat breakfast at home. Mm-hmm. Half the time I'm packing their lunch, so they're not eating the lunch there either. But the benefit of each and every person in the school having the availability of free lunch is that they don't specify who's getting it and who's not. The kids don't know. They don't grow up knowing or feeling different from the kids sitting next to them. And I live in a very, our district is a very, like, it's in Northern Kentucky area. It's the most racially and socioeconomically diverse school. And it's not really that diverse. I'll just put that out there, but it's the most diverse in our county. And
you're in Kentucky, that's why.
Right. I know. I am close to Cincinnati. So there's there's a little bit of diversity, but not much. Mm-hmm. But it's my kids don't know which of their friends struggle. Like when I meet their parents and I like talk to their parents and I can see what their home life is like, or hear their parents' struggles, that's when I know what's going on at their home or in their life, but they don't know. And I think that that's a blessing to those kids that that need the free lunch.
Absolutely. You should not have to go to school worried about if you're going to eat or not, because you're not going to perform. The United States is constantly behind everybody else, or behind the larger powers when it comes to education. The last thing we need is to send children to school where they can't eat. They're not going to perform. You can't concentrate on anything if you haven't eaten. Most people can't concentrate if they haven't had their cup of coffee in the morning. So God forbid, you're going there and you can't eat. As far as the with the free lunch thing, no, Paul, they're not going to take your daughter off because once they can't take her off. Once she's on, they can't take her off because the school will actually get fined for that. They do get extra money. It's part of the staffing allocations for students to when they get on free lunch. But they make it very difficult because here in Texas, what they do is they'll send out like the free lunch form when you get like your beginning of the year packet or whatever. They send that out and you have the option to fill it out or not fill it out. Well, if you don't fill it out, you won't get it. But as a school, we can't call you and say, hey, you didn't fill out the free lunch form and you might need to. We can't do that. We can't say, even if you were on it last year, we can't say, hey, you were on this last year. Do you need to take advantage of this year? We can't do that. The government keeps us from doing that. So yeah, we do get the money, but most of the things that people are worried about don't really happen, because like the waste thing, as far as food is concerned, there's little kids, there's going to be waste anyway. You know what I'm saying? That's just, that's just how that is. If they don't like it, they don't want to eat it, there's going to be that issue. But with the bill that they just passed is part of a $1.5 trillion deal or something like that. And it was part of COVID. And now that COVID is over, they want to kind of take things back to normal. They need to trim some fat. And it's easier to trim fat with kids because, kids can't vote. Just saying. So they took that part out of it. National free lunch programs only cost they only cost like $14 billion, as opposed to this $1.5 trillion spending bill that they just passed. So they wanted to take that money and allocate it somewhere else. A lot of those kids, if they don't get to eat during the summer, if that school doesn't feed them, they're not going to eat. That time they might get down to 2 meals or one meal a day in some cases. I've seen that myself and where I work. In our area, we do free lunch for the students through the summer all the time. We do it all the time because we are part of the National Free Lunch Program. So we do that all the time for most of the summer. And there's stations that are set up. We don't have to do any extra employees coming in to do whatever. A lot of times the teachers and some of the administrators want to come out and help give out the food and stuff. And so they just pack them a grab and go kind of thing. They come pick it up and off they go. But we know that those kids, if they don't get it from the school, they won't get it.
Well, that's well said. I like that. I don't know if you guys can see the comments or not. Natalie actually brought up a good little subject. She said, my kid's school asks for income to qualify for free lunch, or if you're right over it, it's like 70 cents. I still feel like no kid should be paying for lunch. This is ridiculous. Yo, Coop, I appreciate that, brother. This is crazy. Let's see. Question. Did anybody else want to touch on that before we move on to the next question?
I just want to say the average school lunch costs like $2.75. It's somewhere between $2.50 and $2.75.
Man, this is my thing. Before I even go on to the next question, if you're in jail, city jail, county jail, prison, feds, you eat for free. And I know from experience, and you eat good, especially in prison. You eat. I'm not gonna lie. When I back in my time, when I did my time, like I ate amazing. I was on a pork unit. We ate amazing, like man, for free. But we have a problem feeding kids. I'm just gonna say that, and I'm gonna move on to the next question. All right, question 5. Do you guys think the government should be responsible for making sure kids eat at school? And that goes back to my last question about them passing that bill.
I guess since we'll just start with me again because that's where we've been starting at.
There you go.
I got 2 feelings about that. The first feeling is none of this is the kid's fault. The parents are responsible for their kids. So it goes back to if you enable a parent not to have to take responsibility for their kid, some parents are going to do that. So the kid is the only one that suffers whether or not the parent is responsible. Now, and like I say, it's been so long. All my kids are grown now. And I heard you say $275 a day. Realistically, there's 11% of the population is impoverished, but 15% of the population is on school lunch. So that means people like me were on it. And just to know that I never signed up for it and got it. I don't know how they did it. But that said, how do you get to this balance point where parents are responsible because they're supposed to be versus the state taking up the slack when they just can't do it? And I don't know if there's a crystal ball that allows you to see that, because some parents put their kids in these positions and then the state has to pick it up. So how do we do that? Because the kids shouldn't suffer either way, but the parents need to be held responsible, because if they're walking around with $1,000 phones but they can't pay for their kids' lunch, I mean, there's got to be something in the middle here.
Yeah, and I hear you on that. I get that. I think it's hard to complain about people when they become adults if they didn't have the right things when they were children. And I understand if, the parents are making bad choices, that is putting the kids in that position. But food is a basic need that you have to have food for your brain to properly learn what you're being taught in school, and your behavior is better if you're not hungry all the time. Like it's scientific, the effect that food has and not having food has on your body, on your brain, on your mental health. Like all of those things are affected. And for especially at public schools, like for children not to have access to lunch, it's detrimental to their education. And then, like if that's happening when they're younger, like you can't complain when something goes wrong later in their life, because they weren't even given like basic needs when they were like being educated.
Yeah, they didn't have an equitable start.
Exactly.
I'm gonna poke the bear a little bit. I'm gonna geek out for a second. Okay, so with the kids and with them not being able to eat it at school, as far as like the parent component is concerned, these babies are here. I mean, they're here. There's nothing we can do about it. Now we can't fix their parents. Taking their kids, starving their kids at school is not going to make them be a better parent. It's not going to make them more responsible. It's not going to make them make more money. And when you talk about 11% of our folks are impoverished, but yet 15% may be getting this free and reduced lunch kind of thing, the issue is that it's not just people who are impoverished who need it. Because there are people who are working every day, going to work every day, going to school and work every day, doing everything they can. And by through paying bills and other responsibilities, they have like $5, $10 left. Then how are they going to feed anybody with that? And so those folks end up going to food banks and going to other things. And the organizations that I work with, we see that more and more now, especially now with our economy the way it is. I mean, it's just heartbreaking to watch these families, be broken and know that, 2-parent homes, stable homes, as people like to say, and they still can't, they're just not able to make the ends meet. So this is something that is there for them that they can use to at least make sure that their kid gets something to eat during the day, so that when they go home, they can have to worry about the other things that they have to worry about. Because I mean, being real about it, kids who are on free and reduced lunch, sometimes there are other aspects of their life that might be troubling as well. That's just my experience from working where I do. And Jessica is absolutely right. You can't learn when you're hungry. You can't do it. I just don't understand how people can be so heartless and not want to feed these children. I don't get it. It's the summertime. They need to eat. Feed these babies. They haven't done anything to anybody. You know what I mean? So, and when they have those lunch programs available for them through the summer, it also helps keep track of them. Helps us to make sure that we can find them when school starts again, so we can make sure that they're not only getting the nutritional nourishment they need, but the intellectual nourishment they need. Because every time we give them a lunch, we give them a book. You know what I mean? You're not getting one without the other. You know what I'm saying? So it's a way to, to touch base and build that community around it. And then when the parents see that you're caring about their kids, then they're more likely to want to step up and help and do more in that aspect as well.
Can I let me reframe what I said, because I don't think I explained it correctly, or where it was understood the way what I was trying to get to. Some of these kids are caught up in a generational curse. So in other words, the same kids that you're feeding today are going to have kids you're going to be feeding 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and so forth.
Agreed.
What I'm asking is, yes, the kids that are here today, we got to take care of them. I don't think that's in dispute. But how do we get, as we go forward, some of these, because you're never going to save everybody, but a good part, a majority of these people off of this generational curse thing? Because at some point we're becoming welfare for a certain segment of our community, and that's not helping them, and it's draining the system. And I don't, again, that's why I'm asking the question: how do we jump in to help? Yeah, we got to feed the kids now, but how do we make sure their kids are not going to have to be fed?
I don't think taking food away from kids is going to help. There are other things that are way deeper and way more than the government would ever consider, that need to be done to break generational curses and to fix what's broken. It's going to take a lot more than anybody is willing to put into a law and pass. The issue is that we can't go deep enough to fix what's broken. So we have to address the broken part.
Well, I mean, and then on top of that, in the state of Texas, it's the law that Texas, because the reason why we have like the Robin Hood laws and we have like these free and reduced lunch programs anyway, is because in the state of Texas, they wrote it in their constitution that they have to provide an equitable educational system for students throughout their state. But the United States Constitution doesn't guarantee the right to an education, but the states do. So Texas kind of put themselves in that own boat, if you think about it.
Paul, you said, how do we break this generational curse? Unfortunately, it's going to have to be us, we the people, to break that curse. So like Jessica just basically said, like the government don't give a fuck about the generational curse. You know what I mean? They gonna put a Band-Aid on it and let's move on with life. You know what I mean? The government not gonna care enough or put enough money into trying to change what's going on. Why? Because this is how they make their money. So it's gonna come down to us people. Like I say this a lot. As kids, we were always told it takes a village to raise a kid, and that's what everyone forgot. Everyone forgot about that. You know what I mean? It's gonna take. We don't have villages anymore. We don't. Exactly. Everyone's looking out for themselves. But it's going to take us, the people, the village, to break that curse, because the government don't give a damn. They're making too much money off these curses, unfortunately. You know what I mean?
And again, I'm not taking up for the government, but...
No, I know you're not. I know you're not.
Well, the government's role is to provide, a safe country to live in, make sure that you got certain freedoms and right, or you're able to exercise certain freedoms and rights. So yeah, they don't care. And there's an argument to be made that they shouldn't care, because again, it's to y'all's point, we are supposed to be taking up that slack and instilling in our kids what they need to learn. But it still goes back to, what are we going to do? Because as Jessica said, right now, what I heard her say was, well, we're just stuck on this and there's really no way to get off of it. And I don't like that answer. We got to get off of it. And people have gotten off of it. But as a village, we got to come up with a plan that encourages people instead of forces people. In other words, it makes them want to do it versus telling them they got to do it. Because everybody fights when you tell them you got to do something, whether it's good for their kids.
But if I don't know, and maybe it's because of the line of work I do, but I feel like if we continue to take care of the children, the parents will want to come, and I've seen it. They want to come, they want to interact. And then at that point, then we get an opportunity to interact with the parents and educate the parents about the things that they need to do. Right. And that kid is a gateway for us to get to what we want. We see all the time now that, people are using children to push their own political agendas. You know what I mean? They're pushing the wrong ones. Not feeding a kid is going to make you look like a monster, because that's what I'm thinking right now. I'm like, how are they going to talk about not feeding children over the summer? What kind of heartless person do you have to be? But and I can understand people worry about waste. People worry about misallocation of funds. School systems really aren't set up that way. You don't have a lot of room to waste. You don't have a lot of room like that, because all that money comes in, it's all put in separate buckets, and you can't mix those buckets. You can't do anything, in particular with that money. It's already allocated for something. And so what the state of Texas has done, I know for sure, Texas and Louisiana, and I will just say the Southern Coast, what they've done is they found a way for them not to have to pay for the things that they need to, because they're supposed to be providing, because all of them have it in their constitution that they're supposed to provide certain things for education. And so by them not doing it, but using the federal monies to do it and holding that over the head of those schools, it's cheaper for them to do it that way. Because if a school uses the federal lunch program, they tell you what to eat. They tell you how to cook it. They tell you when you're supposed to serve it to the kids. You don't get the freedoms that you would think. But they, in Texas, they've used so much of the money that the government has misallocated so much of the funds, like the lottery funds, and they haven't used it for education. So it's got to come from somewhere. So you get the federal lunch program, and that takes up, at least frees up some money that the schools can do something else with.
I like that. All right, and saying that, we have hit our mark. Would you guys be cool to be down to do a part 2 tomorrow?
Yeah, so let me know what time.
All right, cool. I'll message everybody. I appreciate all of y'all coming through, for real. Everyone watching, everyone participating, I appreciate all of you guys. We are out of here. Episode 9 is complete. Everybody have a blessed night.
You too.